Okay, we are going to start today's lesson with just a brief overview of plotting points on the coordinate plane. So just a little mini review here. When we're talking about our input, we are talking about our x values. And when we are talking about our output, we are talking about our y values. Okay, so when we're looking at a graph, the x and the y axis, so our x axis is actually our horizontal axis, and our y axis is our vertical axis. Okay, and that helps us plot our points. You should also know that the ordered pairs that are given to you in the format of x comma y. So the x coordinate, just like it's first in our table, it's going to be first in our point. Okay, so we have a graph right here, and we are supposed to take those points and put them into the table. Okay, so if I'm looking at my first point, I'm just going to trace down to the x-axis to find my x-coordinate. My x-coordinate or my input is 1. And then I'm going to follow it over to the y-axis to find my y value, which is 2. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the next point, so I'm going to follow it down to the x-axis to find my input, which was 2. And I'm going to follow it over to the y-axis to get my y value or my output, which is 3. And I'm just going to continue the process. Input is 3. Output is 4. Input is 4. Output is 5. And my last point, input is 5. Output is 6. Okay, so that's really all that you're being asked to do for that first problem. And you might recognize that that first problem was from your opener. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite. So we are going to take the input and output from the table, and we're going to plot it on the coordinate plane to the right. So again, I'm just going to label that this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis, also known as input and output. And I'm going to start with my first point here. So I'm just going to kind of color code. So my first point is going to be -2, 1. Okay, so my -2, I'm going to go over to -2 and up to 1. And you can see that they've already done this for you. I'm just going to color code it with the same color. Okay. And then my next point I'm going to make orange. So my input is -1, so on my x-axis, I'm going to go over and find -1, and then go down to -1 on my output. I'm going to use blue for my next point. So 0 is my input, so I'm going to stay right at the origin, and then I'm going to go down 2 to find -2 on my output. My next point, I'm going to use green. My input is 1, so I'm going to go over to 1. My output is -1, so I'm going to go down to -1. Last point, my input is 2, so I'm going to go over to 2. And my output is 1, so I'm going to go up to 1. Okay, I will say that these labels are a little, I don't really like the way that the labels are put on, but really this is saying to you that the input is the horizontal axis. Okay, so input is horizontal and output is vertical, even though it does not necessarily look like that because it's kind of lined up with the opposite axis, but that's what the labels are. Okay. All right, so now that we've plotted some points, let's go down and let's look at the next section of our notes where we are trying to match the ordered pairs to their table. Okay, so you have a table. We know that we're going to be writing a rule from this table because you have to match it, but we're also going to be matching ordered pairs. Okay, so ordered pairs are points. A table is a way to organize points, and points satisfy an equation of a line. Okay, so we're going to be doing some matching here. So I'm going to use my highlighter. And the first thing I guess I'm going to do is I'm going to match the table. So this table, if we look at this table, I want to match that to the ordered pairs. So I'm looking for the ordered pair -2, -1, 0, 2, and 2, 5. And if you look, we've got it right down here. So those two match together. I'm just going to grab another color highlighter, and I'm going to match my second table with the ordered pairs. So -2, 3, -1, 4, 2, 7, and here are those points. And let's see, I'm going to grab a third color for my third table. So -2, 3, -1, 1, 0, -1. And there's that one. And let's grab a fourth color here. Let's grab orange. Okay. And then I want to match this table, -2, -7, 0, 1, 1, 5. So there's the ordered pairs. Okay, that was the easy part. The hard part, or the harder part, is going to be actually finding the equation that matches. So we're going to look at our table, and we're going to find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so for my first one, I'm always looking for the change in y divided by the change in x to find my slope. Okay, so if I go from -1 to 2, I'm adding 3, 2 to 5, adding 3. I want to look at my change in x now. So my change in x, -2 to 0 is +2, 0 to 2 is +2. So I know that my slope, which is the change in y over the change in x, is a +3/2. Okay, and I'm going to leave it as a fraction because I don't see any decimals. So I'm going to leave my equation as a fraction since none of the equations below have decimals. I'm going to leave that slope in fraction form. Okay, the only other thing that we need to find is we need to find our y-intercept. And if you look, we find where x is 0, and our y-intercept is 2. So our b, or our y-intercept, is 2. Okay, so that should be enough for us to figure out what the equation is. So if we filled in our skeleton equation, our slope is 3/2, our y-intercept is 2, and there it is. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so I'm going to look at my change in y again. So from 3 to 4, I'm adding 1. From 4 to 7, I'm adding 3. Okay, so you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's not the same number, but let's just have a look. Okay, so let's look at our change in x as well. So from -2 to -1, that's a +1. From -1 to +2 is a +3. Okay, so when we go to find our slope, we're going to choose which pair of numbers. Okay, so we could either choose +1/1, which equals 1, or we could choose 3/3, which also equals 1. Okay, now you'll notice that our b value, our x, is not 0 in this table at all. So we don't have our y-intercept actually in the table, but I think we have enough information with the slope to match the appropriate equation. Okay, so if I look at my equations, which one of these has a slope of 1? Well, this one has a slope of 1. Y equals 1x plus 5. Okay, and that is the one that matches our equation. Okay, let's take a look at our third table. Again, change in y, change in x. Okay, from 3 to 1, I'm subtracting 2. From 1 to -1, I'm also subtracting 2. Looking at my change in x, -2 to -1, that's +1. -1 to 0 is +1. So my slope, being the change in y over the change in x, is -2 divided by 1, which is -2. And my b value is in this table, 0, -1. I don't actually see that in our equations. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cross this out and we're going to put a 1 there. And we're going to match that up. Okay. All right. Last one, by process of elimination, would have to go to 4x plus 1, but let's just double check. For practice, change in y, -7 to 1, that's adding 8. 1 to 5 is adding 4. Looking at the x column, -2 to 0 is adding 2. 0 to 1 is adding 1. Okay, so whatever pair you look at, whether you look at 8 divided by 2, or you look at 4 divided by 1, both are going to give you a slope of 4. And your y-intercept is right there in your table. When x is equal to 0, y is 1. So we are looking for y equals 4x plus 1, and by process of elimination, that was the last equation. All right, this should help with homework, so make sure you get your notes